You know what's funny? The people who obsess the most about doing everything perfectly are usually the people who never do anything at all. They're the guys who spend 6 months researching how to start a YouTube channel, the guy who's been planning his gym comeback since 2017, the girl who's almost ready to start a business once she perfects the idea. Spoiler, she won't, because perfection isn't a strategy, it's procrastination dressed up in a tuxedo. I get asked all the time, how do you stay consistent? How do you find time to go to the gym with work, with life, with everything else? And my answer is always the same. You make time for it. And that's usually where the conversation dies, because that's when the excuses start to roll in. Oh, but I wake up early for work. I'm too tired after work. I need my sleep. And you know what? They're right. Those are all very valid excuses. You do need sleep. You should rest. You should optimize your nutrition and recovery. But you don't need any of that to start. If you're waiting for perfect conditions, you'll end up waiting forever. Let's make it pretty simple. If you had to bet on who would get stronger, the guy who sleeps 8 hours every night, eats perfectly, tracks every macro but never trains, or the guy who sleeps for 5 hours, eats McDonald's, but trains like his life depends on it, you're picking the McDonald's guy every single time. Because the other guy's perfect plan is useless without action. The truth is, half-assing something is way better than not assing it at all. People don't fail because they lack information. They fail because they want certainty before they act. They want the guarantee that every rep, every piece of content, every business idea will succeed before they even start. But that's not how progress works. You move, you mess up, you adjust, and you keep going. Here's a simple example. Imagine two writers. One writes terrible pages every single day. The other waits for inspiration to strike and writes a perfect page every 3 months. Who do you think becomes the better writer over a long period of time? The one with 900 bad pages and not 3 good ones. Because somewhere in that pile of mediocrity, they'll stumble on something good and they'll get better in the process. That's what people don't get about mastery. It's not about genius, it's about volume. There's a famous experiment with a pottery class. One half of the students were told they'd be graded on quality. They had to make the perfect pot. The other half were graded on quantity. They needed to make as many pots as they possibly could. Guess who made the best pots in the end? That's right, the quantity group. Because they got more reps in, they failed faster, learned faster, and improved faster. And that's the game. Success is about giving yourself enough shots at goal to eventually hit one clean. The same thing applies to literally every area of life. Investing, for example. The perfect investors who time the market, study trends, and wait for the perfect time to buy are almost always beaten by the guy who invests a small amount every single month consistently. The index fund guy doesn't have a genius brain, he just invests consistently. Because unfortunately, you can't beat time and consistency with intellect. It's the same thing with training, work, money, relationships. You don't get better by waiting for perfect conditions. You get better by showing up even when you're unmotivated, even when it feels pointless. Here's something people don't talk about often enough. When you half-ass something long enough, eventually it becomes full-assed. The first few workouts suck. You lift like an idiot, your form's bad, and you hate yourself afterwards. But then, week after week, you get stronger, you learn how to lift better, and your standards begin to rise. You didn't wake up as a disciplined, well-trained person. You just showed up enough to eventually become that. Most people think success is about intensity, and that does play a role, but rarely it's about persistence. Anyone can go hard for a week, but few can go half hard for a decade. Think about how absurd it is that people don't go to the gym because they don't have enough energy to train. Do you know what gives you more energy? Training. It's like saying you can't drive your car because it doesn't have enough petrol in it, but the petrol station is just 2 blocks away. And people wonder why they're in the same place year after year. They're optimizing their way into paralysis. They research, plan, and wait until every single variable is perfect. Then a year goes by, then 5, and they've done nothing. Perfectionists end up always being the most consistent quitters. Perfectionism is rooted in fear. Fear of looking stupid. Fear of failing publicly. Fear of not being as good as you think you are. So you stay in the preparation phase forever because it's a lot safer than actually seeing the truth. That's why some of the most talented people you meet are broke, out of shape, and miserable. They mistake their standards for discipline when really they're just cowards hiding behind them. The funny thing is when you stop chasing perfection and you start actively doing things badly, you start moving faster. You get feedback from reality and you start learning what works and what doesn't. You build a tolerance for failure, and that tolerance turns into confidence. Confidence doesn't come from success, it comes from surviving embarrassment. The people who achieve the most aren't the smartest or the most talented, they're the ones who can survive being cringe. Ones who can look like an idiot in public and just keep going anyway. Look at YouTube. Most big creators' first videos were fucking terrible. Bad lighting, awkward delivery, terrible editing. But they didn't wait until they had the perfect gear or setup, they just started posting. The difference between them and the thousands who never uploaded is that they half-assed it publicly. Every success story looks polished in hindsight, but behind it is a graveyard of bad drafts, failed attempts, and uncomfortable learning curves. The people who make it are just the ones who didn't die in that graveyard. Here's a story that's been told in different forms, but is true across every discipline. In Silicon Valley, they say, if you're not embarrassed by your first product, you launch too late. That's not marketing wisdom. That's life wisdom. Every new venture, project, or pursuit starts out rough because it's supposed to. The first version of anything will suck, but it's the price of admission to get the good version. Your first business idea will probably fail. Your first video will flop. Your first workout will feel terrible. Your first investment will probably lose money, and that's fine because it means you started, and that's more than most people do. People romanticize starting conditions because they imagine there's an invisible line between amateurs and professionals. There isn't. The only difference is that professionals have survived more bad attempts. The people who win are the ones who stack small wins over time, while everyone else is waiting for the perfect moment. And by the way, that perfect moment never comes. You just wake up one day, realize you've wasted 5 years, and wish you've started earlier. It's the same thing with fitness. If you did the bare minimum every single day, you'd be a different person by the end of the year. If you did just 10 push-ups every day, that's 3,650 push-ups in a year. That is more than most people do in their lifetime. You could half-ass your training, half-ass your diet, half-ass your sleep, half-ass your recovery, and you'd still look better than the person waiting for things to just calm down before they start. Because life never calms down. Life doesn't get easier, you just get stronger. But you can't get stronger if you're stuck in the research phase. I once read a quote that said, "The master has failed more times than the beginner has even tried." That's it. That's the truth that most people don't want to hear. You can't hack your way around failure, you can only get through it faster. If you half-ass something every single day for a year, you'd be miles ahead of the person who full-assed it once. Because the person who full-assed it once probably burned out immediately afterwards. That was terrible delivery, but keep it in. Sustainability beats intensity. That's why I laugh when people talk about optimal. That's why my entire channel is kind of opposed to optimal. Optimal training, optimal recovery, optimal productivity. It's bullshit. There is nothing optimal about being stuck in your own head. The irony of perfectionism is that it's actually ego. You think you're too good to fail. You think your first draft should be brilliant. Your first workout flawless. Your first business attempt profitable. And when it's not, your fragile little ego collapses. So you tell yourself that you're just waiting for the right time. You're not waiting, you're hiding. Half-assing your way forward, failing publicly, kills that ego. Because you have to look stupid. You have to admit that you're not there yet. But it's also freeing. Because once you accept that you're not supposed to be great yet, you can finally get permission to start. So stop overthinking the plan. Stop waiting until you feel ready. Half-ass something today. Go to the gym and do one set. Write one page. Film one take. You'll be terrible at first. Everyone is. But you'll be one rep closer to being decent. And decent is infinitely better than doing nothing. The truth is, most of life is built on half measures. You'll never have the perfect diet, perfect sleep, perfect schedule, or the perfect mindset. Everything is always a little bit fucked. But you don't need perfection to progress, you just need motion. Perfectionists fantasize about results. Consistent people create them. So, yeah, half-ass your way to success. Because the people who wait for perfect conditions end up perfectly average. Thank you for watching.